Welcome to the Authentic Self-Revolution. I'm Carly, your guide on this journey to genuine living and the real wealth of freedom and fulfillment. In a world that just loves to tell us who we should be, we're here to remember who we truly are. We're here for the questioners, the misfits, and anyone who's ever felt there must be more to life than following the script. Each week, we peel back the layers of shoulds and musts and dive into practical ways to live more authentically. If you're listening only and want to see my face, you can head over to my YouTube channel, Owning Authenticity, where you'll find this podcast along with a treasure trove of other content aimed at uncovering who you truly are. Your authentic self is waiting, so let's dive in. I have what I think is a very fun episode for you guys today, and that is we're going to talk about 5 survival superpowers, okay? And what a survival superpower is, and I think I made that up. I don't know. It could be a thing, but how I'm defining it is that when we are young, based on our environment and our social conditioning, which we are just wrapping up a 4-part deep dive into what even is social conditioning, based on how your environment is, we learned to cope with that environment and we got really good at it. And when I say coping, I just mean deal with. I mean, how did you stay safe? How did you protect yourself? How did you keep the peace in that situation? How did you keep the balance in that situation? All in the efforts of keeping yourself safe, because our mind and body is wired for survival. So coping mechanisms, they are always self-protective. Always. Only always. Our coping mechanisms trying to protect us. And so what I want to talk about with these survival superpowers, and I have 5 of them for you as far as like these different abilities that we developed as a means of staying safe in early life. And because our life depended on it, whether that was actually true or it just felt like it was true, doesn't really matter. It was a life and death situation. Our system is built to protect us. And so we became experts at that coping mechanism. And we might say that that sucks. Okay. And often the coping mechanism conversation can veer in that direction. The conditioning conversation can veer in that direction as far as like, it's a bad thing that what happened to us. And I'm not necessarily saying it was a good thing, but what I am saying is from a very pragmatic perspective of like, it is what it is. Your childhood happened and there is no rewriting that story of the facts of the unfolding. But I would invite you to use this episode as a way to look back at the story and see if there are maybe just a different layer to be able to add some more context, add some more depth to being able to appreciate what happened, because it is what it is. And then if you want to only look at the bad, that's like that victim consciousness, that victim mindset of like, this happened to me. Or we can open up more of a gratitude mindset, an appreciation type mindset, an empowerment type mindset, and say, this happened for me. And that gets a lot easier when you can see the good that came out of the way it was. And so that's what we're looking at today, these survival superpowers. You have superpower-like abilities that are just built into who you are, that you don't even have to think about. They come so naturally to you. And the reason you have them is a little bit sad, because that's how you coped, that's how you stayed safe, depending on the dangers that were present in your early life. And again, whether they were actual dangers or perceived dangers does not matter. The mind and body does not know the difference between an actual and a perceived threat. So it'll react the same. The amygdala kicks in, the adrenaline goes, the cortisol goes, the fight or flight response is in overdrive, creating this coping mechanism of like, what do I need to do to stay safe? And so as we think about these coping styles, we're essentially saying there was some good that came with the bad. All right. And this episode also, I'll tell you, grew up out of one of the clients that I work with. And she was saying that she does this thing and it prevents connection. It prevents, like, it kind of pushes people away a little bit, and it keeps her emotions like to herself. It's like a wall around her that keeps other people on the outside. And we were like trying to talk about like how to kind of take down that wall and start to let certain people come in a little bit more. And in the arc of that conversation, it's like, yeah, but it's also a really beautiful thing that you have that ability. And so, yes, it may be not serving you in some cases, and you want to become more aware of it and evolve to have additional skills, right? Like, it's not like you have to stop doing that altogether. Probably couldn't, even if you wanted to. It's like that deeply ingrained in who we are at this point, the way we coped in early life. Like, it's just very much a part of who we are. But the more aware of it we are, the more we can choose to pull a different tool out of our toolbox in certain situations. And so this conversation hopefully makes you a little bit more appreciative of the good side of like the abilities that you have because of the way you had to cope, and can make you more conscious of that coping style, the environment that produced that coping style. And then you can recognize, like, you know, actually right now, I'm not in an environment like that, so I don't need to cope that way. And I think all of this will make more sense as we go through the 5 types of coping styles. And this is not an exhaustive list. Like, I'll bet there are many more, and as many of us as there were unique environments that we were raised in and that we had to cope with. And so I also wouldn't be surprised if, as you take these in, you know, I'm going to give you 5 examples, and you start to see, actually, I have these too, or I have all 5 of them, or, you know, whatever. And the more threats that were in your early environment, and again, remember, it doesn't matter if it was a perceived threat or a real threat, the more threats there were, the more coping you needed to do. And the next part of that story is like, and the more superpowers you have. Okay, there was good that came with the bad. I'm always a silver lining kind of person. Okay, I can't help myself. It's just how I'm wired. And that is one of my coping mechanisms. Hello. And now I have this superpower where, like, I can see the good no matter how dark it is. There is always a silver lining if you choose to see it. And so let's dive in. Let's dive into the 5 types of coping styles. Number 1, the humor diffuser. Okay, you're cracking a joke. Things get a little tense. You can whip out a funny story. You can make a joke. You could be sarcastic. You could like pull in a thread from earlier in the conversation and like weave it back in a funny way. Using humor to diffuse interpersonal tension. All right, when things get tense, you want it to stop. And if you think about the typical home environment that produced that, it was high stress, potentially volatile, and where laughter would provide relief. You know, like if you were dealing with somebody who was high stress and volatile and you cracked a joke and it made it worse, you would not develop this particular coping mechanism. If anything, it would almost kill your sense of humor, because if I try to be funny in a moment and they're already upset, they just get more upset. I'm not going to be funny because being funny is dangerous. In the humor diffuser, being funny made it better, right? Like if you could distract them and make them laugh, then the tension would come back down and you were more safe. So the superpower that comes with this is the ability to lighten the mood, the ability to reduce stress in social situations. You're almost like just kind of I think of like a teapot and like the little valve that like lets the steam come out of the teapot. Like that's you a little bit. There's probably a lot of different analogies of ways to think about that. So that's the superpowers, like ability to lighten the mood, ability to crack a joke, ability to see a funny and to like get a laugh. And like laughing is cathartic, which is why in some situations it does help to diffuse the tension. It can move the energy through the laughter. Laughter and crying, they're both cathartic because they're transmuting that energy through the throat. And that's the good side, the ability to lighten the mood. The challenge is there's a difficulty in handling serious situations without resorting to humor, right? Like you can crack a joke at not the right time with not the right kind of people where it makes it worse. And that if your go-to is humor, not everybody appreciates that. And that's where, like, again, as we go through these 5, maybe you recognize you're right. I am really good at diffusing tension with humor. And I have one of these other ones that lets me know when that's probably not the best way to go. Okay. I'm also really good at reading people. Like these are the ones we're going to get into. So you may actually have like a package of coping mechanisms that lets the challenges of each one be less. So again, like all of this is like, let's just like latch onto the good because we got it and it is. So we might as well make the best of it. Okay. All right. And so the gift focus of the humor diffuser, like you have a gift for bringing joy and laughter to others and easing tense situations. All right. And like, that's not nothing. That's not nothing. Like you have a light air about you that like lifts other people up, lifts their spirits. And sometimes that's not easy to do, but especially when this is how you coped, laughter worked in your early life to diffuse tension and keep you safe, then you have this natural like comedic ability. And this was the one that my client and I were talking about. And that actually got us off on this whole thing about like how many stand-up comedians who like make a living standing on stage and making other people laugh, how many of them have that ability, that comedic timing that is so well honed, that perspective to like find the funny in life, to make things funny. How many of them, probably not all, but a good big majority, have a coping mechanism that now they've turned into, I'm sharing my gift on stage in front of all of these people, getting paid to make people laugh. Okay, so that's the benefit. That's like the potential of embracing your coping mechanism and making the best out of it. Okay, so let's go on to number 2. Number 2 coping style is the emotion reader. Okay, the emotion reader. This person has a heightened ability to read and interpret others' emotions. Okay, and like if you've ever watched shows like Lie to Me is a good example. There's a couple seasons of that. The Mentalist is a good example. A little bit Criminal Minds, like really anywhere where they're talking like life and death situations of being able to interpret someone's real feelings, because we act based on how we feel. Almost all humans will act based on how they feel. And so if you know how they feel, then you know how they're about to act, and you can get out of the way. You can get ahead of it. You can try to diffuse it. You can try to make them feel better. You can try to keep yourself safe by understanding how they feel. So again, like the typical home environment that would produce an emotion reader is unpredictable or emotionally volatile, where anticipating others' moods was crucial for safety. And this is the kind of thing where like you can tell by how somebody puts their key in the door what kind of mood they're in. You can tell by the way they're carrying their shoulders what kind of mood they're in. And this is born of like, basically you didn't pay attention, you stumbled into a situation, and then there was a blow up or there was an outburst of some kind, and you got more vigilant of like watching for these subtle cues so you could step aside the landmine of the blow up, the outburst, the bad mood landing on you. So again, this is a survival strategy, and it's not pretty to think about it from that angle, but the superpower, okay, the good that comes with the bad is very, very, very strong empathy and intuition about others' feelings. Okay. And like, that's not nothing. Anybody who is like all those shows that I mentioned, like not the shows obviously, but like the people who do that kind of work in real life, like detectives or psychologists or coaches or, you know, emotional space holders of any kind, healers of most kinds, it allows you to do that much more potent work with your client when they don't have to verbalize their feelings. You can scan them and you can read, you get like a whole report just intuitively of like, this is how they feel, pretty much. You know, they're going to clarify the finer points. They're going to, you know, put some details to that narrative. But I know how you feel by, you know, the way your lip is curling right now. I know how you feel by like the sigh you just did. And so an emotion reader has this super strong empathy and intuition about being able to tune into other people's feelings. And the challenge of this, right, that's the good side, is like super strong empathy. And like these people are just like, can feel like mind readers almost to be around. And it's just such a beautiful thing, especially if you are like putting your healing in their hands, like kind of letting them hold space for you. But the challenge of this is that basically your mind and body is trained to be outwardly vigilant, which means you're focusing more on other people's emotions than your own. And so while you are brilliant at reading emotions on other people, being with your own emotions can be one of the most challenging things there is because you have very little practice, right? To cope with your early environment, you had to look out. You like literally look out for who's gonna be upset next, you know? And like, how can I either run? How can I get out of this situation? How can I talk them down? How can I soothe them in some way? How can I bring them peace so that they won't hurt me? You know, like, again, not a pretty picture. Although once you're older and now you're channeling it into like the healing arts, that's a beautiful thing. And becoming more aware of your own emotions is the work of kind of balancing that coping mechanism. And the gift focus of this emotion reader coping style is deep understanding of human emotions and ability to connect with others. I would also add to that ability to bring peace and soothing to others. And it's from having to, like your life and death situation. You had to do that. And then, just like the comedian, you can take that gift and you can share it with other people and turn it into how you contribute, how you earn a living, how you add value to the lives of the people around you. Let's go on to number 3, coping style is the Perfectionist Achiever. Okay, so raise your hand if you're in this boat with me. And I would say like I have for sure the emotion reader, not so much the humor diffuser, but the emotion reader, the Perfectionist Achiever, and the next 2. So I've got like 4 out of the 5 covered on my end. So I would love to hear in the comments, like, which of these are you like, yep, that's me. And even more than that, to like really take it a step further of like, and how are you using that gift? How are you using that superpower to share it with others to like build a life out of like this ability that like, no matter how you gained it, you have it. And how are you making the best of it? I would love to hear in the comments. So the perfectionist achiever is someone who is striving for perfection and high achievement. Okay, pretty much what it sounds like. And the typical home environment that produces a high achiever, a perfectionist achiever, is one where there were high expectations. I would say almost unrealistic expectations, especially based on your age and capacity. It's like expecting, perfection first time out of the gate, expecting like all of this capacity from a 5-year-old or like whatever it was. So it's like super high, maybe unrealistic expectations, and conditional love based on performance. So when you did not perform, you were punished, you were cut off. There was some form of disconnection from either the parent or the whole family, or some kind of like you're put in solitary confinement, like go to your room and like think about this A- that you got on your report card, or like whatever it is. And so the superpower of this, again, that's just like, that can like really bring up a lot of like not awesome memories. The superpower of this perfectionist achiever is exceptional work ethic. Okay. Like when you have that like achiever drive, I mean, there is like that, you're the kind of person that they say like, there's nothing that you can't set your mind to and make it happen. Oh, you want to do that thing? Okay, then you're going to do that thing. Like that ship has sailed. Like you wanting it means it's going to happen, because you will just claw and climb and go and drive and strive to make it happen. Okay. And you have a brilliant attention to detail. And again, there's two sides of this coin. The dark side of like nothing's ever good enough kind of mentality, and the light side of I can create excellence. Not everybody can, right? Like not everybody can take something that's already great and make it excellent. But somebody with a mindset like this one can, because they had to. In order to be loved, in order to even try to be loved, they had to perform. And so they learned how to perform. And this can also be the challenge then, is difficulty accepting imperfection. Difficulty letting yourself be like, that's good enough. No, it's not perfect yet, so I need to put another 100 hours into making it perfect. And difficulty relaxing, right? Like a dog with a bone. Like if it's not perfect yet, then it's not time to stop. And this can lead to burnout. This can lead to really harsh inner self-criticism. Okay, like you're your own toughest critic, like most of us are, but somebody with this coping style has just an exacting eye. That attention to detail turn inwards, as far as like, I'm not perfect enough yet. This is wrong and this is wrong, and I need to be better at this and this and this and that can hurt. It does hurt. And the gift, right? Like we're switching back and forth between like the challenge of having to cope like that, and what that lets you have then is this ability to produce high quality work, this drive for excellence in whatever it is that you set your mind to. And again, like that can pay off for you and in the lives of other people. All right. Like this, I'm never giving up. I will pursue it until it's good enough. And so for this one, especially, where I would say this is like my most traumatic one, is this perfectionist achiever, and drove me off the burnout cliff many, many times. And what I can say about like working with this one and healing this one is really personalize your definition of good enough. Right? Like we have that like all A's perfect, all I's dotted, all T's crossed, like neat, tidy, orderly. Every ounce of chaos has been eradicated. And like that's perfect. But in the earth realm, perfect literally does not exist. That's not how nature works, at least not in our human ideal of perfectionism. I would say everything in nature is perfect because it is, period. Like it was designed and it is what it is. And like, there you go. But our human idea of perfect literally is a hallucination. Okay. So like there's like some crazy town going on inside of perfectionism. So learning to recognize like what's good enough, learning to recognize like what is truly your responsibility, learning to recognize what is actually under your control. Because this one can also have you take responsibility, try to control everything to make everything perfect, including the people you love, other people's jobs. Like you're taking ownership of a lot of things that are none of your business, right? And the end result is your mental health is degrading with every another thing that you pile onto your own shoulders. Okay, so let's go on to number 4, the Chameleon Adapter. All right, the description of this one, it means adapting your behavior to fit different social situations. All right, and this is another one where your typical home environment was very inconsistent. Either your parents were very different, or maybe your parents were even divorced. So you like went to this house and it had one way of being. You went to this house, had another way of being. Maybe like in my situation, like my dad traveled a lot, which basically created like these two households. There was like the way it was when he was there, and there was the way that it was when he was gone, and he was gone for months at a time, most of my early childhood. So these two households of like, you don't know what your environment is about to be, and you need to be able to like assess the environment, figure out like, where do I fit so that I'll be safe, right? Every single bit of this is self-protection so that I'll be safe, and then get the right mask and put it on and be that. And then 5 minutes later, 5 days later, the environment has shifted. I need to get a different mask and I need to put that on so I can be this, so that I can stay safe. And the superpower, there was a little bit more of the typical home environment. Frequently changing and flexibility was key to belonging. Like another example of this that somebody shared with me, where they absolutely have this one, like they are chameleon extraordinaire, and their mom had almost like two personalities, where some days she would wake up like in this awesome mood, and she's got jeans and a t-shirt on and like sneakers, and her hair's all like frizzy and curly and whatever. And she's like, all right, what are we going to make today? Where are we going to play? What do you want to do? What sounds fun? And like, this is great. This is her mom. And then the next day, she would come out and she would have on high heels and a skirt and like this like collared shirt, like buttoned all the way up to here. And her hair's like in this bun and like slicked all back. And like on those days, she could take one look at her and be like, that's not my mom. And on those days, she's like, we need to clean the house. We need to get this together. No, don't do that. Don't get dirty. And like, it just was like a completely different mom, same person. And so flexibility was key to belonging, because fun mom, you could play with her. You could be loud and silly and happy and joyful and playing and la, la, la. And serious mom, she's going to chew your ass for being all those things that just fit in with fun mom yesterday. And so depending on who she was when she walked out in the morning, she put on the mask and she was who she needed to be to not get in trouble with whichever mom it was that day. Okay. So this is the Chameleon Adapter. It's like, I'm going to read the room and I'm going to be what I need to be, because I need to belong, because belonging keeps me safe, right? That's the only reason we value belonging. A lot of people out there are like seeking after belonging, and it's like, really what you want is to feel safe. Right? Like, I need to be this way because I need to belong. I love oh gosh, I just want my people. And it's like, right, so I can be safe. To make that as fully conscious as possible is really key, because you can create a lot of safety just inside yourself, with or without belonging to other people. Essentially, you can belong to you. You can watch your own back. You can keep yourself safe. You can prioritize your own needs and make sure that they're met. again, regardless of what anybody else is doing, but I digress. Back to the Chameleon Adapter. The superpower is versatility, okay? An ability to thrive in various environments. Like this person that I was describing, like she can get along with anyone, including a lot of people who other people would say, that guy's an asshole. That guy's the biggest jerk I've ever met. And she's like, he's fine. He's fine. He seems fine to me, because she'll just like read and like, oh, put this mask on. Okay, now I'm safe. And it's almost like an invisibility cloak to be what the other person expects you to be who you need to be to like fly under the radar and stay safe and accepted, right? It's again, like when you think about a superpower, like you think about like somebody who wants to go undercover. You think about like, this is not exactly the best interpretation, but like a con artist has a lot of this. Like I can just adapt and I can just be different and I can just like be who you want me to be. But like a lot of us have the ability to manipulate our outward expression, to like curate our outward expression based on who we think we should be in this moment, and like a very minor, not malicious at all version of this is like most of us, almost all of us, I would say, have a private self, who we are in the privacy of our own bedroom or whatever, and a public self, a work self, a family self, and like that's not that different than this chameleon adapter idea of like, what creates all of those different selves? The need to belong and the ability to read the person that you're standing in front of and be in alignment with them. And much like the emotion reader, the difficulty of this is that you're so good at changing that you have a difficulty identifying your true self amidst all of these different personas. This reminds me of like the movie The Runaway Bride, where she was like trying to figure out which kind of eggs she actually liked, because when she was with so-and-so, she ate scrambled eggs. And when she was with so-and-so, she ate poached eggs. And when she was with so-and-so, she ate these eggs. Whatever kinds of eggs you want, yeah, that's fine. I'll have that. Like I'll just adapt to whatever you're doing. And then when you're alone, when you're by yourself, you don't know. Wait, how do I actually be? Because there's nobody for me to mimic, right? So like that can be the challenge, but the gift of it is social flexibility, right? And so these are like people, like you would do awesome in like a sales position or a public facing customer service job or whatever, so long as you like adapting, you like doing this. I mean, you certainly have the ability for it, but just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Okay, like that's an important note with all of these. But yeah, social flexibility and the ability to connect with diverse groups of people. And also, I would say, like, if you've really become conscious of this ability, this is something that also like a mediator has this ability as well. Like somebody who can sit in the middle and listen and identify with and get in the shoes of like this person over here and like really understand their point of view, and then do the same thing for the person on the other side of the table, and then almost like act as a translator to like explain to this one's perspective. Like what I heard this one say is this, and based on what I understand about your perspective, this might be how best to explain it to you, right? So like this adaptability can almost like act as a bridge builder, right? Again, if that kind of thing is cool to you, like if you don't get lit up about it, then right, mark it off the list. But let's move on to the fifth coping style, and that is the mindful retreater. Okay, this is like a freeze avoid kind of coping style, and this happened when your environment was just very, very overwhelming. And that could have taken many different shapes, but when it was super overwhelming, our system like just can't process it. And that's true for everyone. It's just a matter of like how overwhelming was your home environment. And This one I relate to the least of the four that I relate to. And like, even that, like, you could kind of look at like, oh, this one is like 100% me. This one, like, yeah, kind of, but I see it in me a lot less, you know, like just kind of even looking at them as a spectrum, not like black and white. If you listen to a lot of episodes, I recommend that a lot. Like, nothing in this life is black and white. We probably all have all of these to some extent, but the tendency to step back or disengage in overwhelming situations. And the home environment of that, it was overstimulating. It was emotionally uncertain. Physical safety was uncertain. And your best bet was just to stand still and wait and see what was going to happen. Stand still, be quiet, and just wait and see. And you think about, like, if your home environment was a minefield, okay, like picture an actual field and every 6 inches there is a bomb, okay, and like this was your home life, like you couldn't step anywhere without setting off a bomb. Everything you did got a backlash or an outburst or whatever, and so you learn to just stand still, be quiet. And again, that breaks my heart for the reasons we had to get really good at this particular coping style, the mindful retreater. But the superpower, okay, because every single one of them has good that comes with the bad. So the superpower of this one is your ability to process information deeply and preserve energy. Because there is almost no reactivity to you. Like, all the reactivity was like traumatized out of you. So you just stand still, be quiet. And that means like you don't fight, you don't get into conflicts, you don't waste energy on something that like isn't going to unfold in a productive way. You just stand still, be quiet, and observe. And think about it and analyze, like, you know, well, maybe it'll be like this. And if it's like this, then maybe I could do this. And you're like creating all of these plans in your head just in case. And not really physically acting much of anything out until there's certainty. There's like a path forward that you can see, that you have relative certainty that I can get down this path safely. Right? So that's the superpower, this ability to process information deeply rather than take in one little bit and react to it. Right? Like, if it was safe to say whatever popped into your head, you've got like a lot of reactivity in your system, versus if it wasn't safe to say things, then you almost like eliminate all of the reactivity. There's just freeze and avoid. And so this preserving energy can be a superpower. The challenge of it, however, is that you can miss opportunities, and those opportunities could be for deepening connection or taking action to get a benefit or get a result that you really want, right? Like, you almost get stuck in this like analysis paralysis that can have you just slow to act, right? But on the gift focus, you are some of the most thoughtful decision makers, and that you are wired for self-preservation. It's like, these are the kinds of people that like to be with during the zombie apocalypse, because they are going to be analyzing and like not looking for a fight, right? Like, I am only going to act when I absolutely have to, or when I'm relatively certain that it's going to work out well for me. And these introspective insights, again, because you're so focused inward and like analyzing everything that comes along, you can have these deeper insights, because again, when you're reacting, you're already taking action. You're no longer contemplating. Okay, so the more we act, the less introspective we are. The more introspective we are, the less we act. Okay, and so it's like this trade-off. And again, it is what it is. Like, if you relate to this one, if you relate to the mindful retreater, then you have it. And how can you make the best of it? So as you've listened to all of these different coping styles, again, I would love to hear in the comments, like, which one resonates as maybe your primary, or maybe these 5 like triggered a memory or like got you to see a perspective that you've thought of like a sixth one, and that's your primary coping style? And how are you making the best of it? How are you finding the gift that is, that you have that ability inside of you? And how can you share that gift, or how are you already sharing that gift with others to add value, create reciprocity for yourself, maybe even earning a living with these gifts that you had to acquire so that you could stay alive, right? At any point, we can stop looking at what happened to me and start looking at how it happened for me, and choose to become empowered in the abilities that we have, no matter how we acquired them. Dear friends, this has been a pleasure to go through this episode with you. Again, I would love to hear from you in the comments. If you would like to talk about your specific coping styles, superpowers, gifts, and how you could be sharing them more actively, that's a great example for the kinds of conversations I have during the authenticity activation sessions, which are free one-on-one Zoom sessions. You can go to owningauthenticity.com/activate to book yours, and we can have a one-on-one conversation about how could you be more in touch, using your gifts, sharing your gifts, creating the life of your dreams by making the best of who you are. Until next time, I hope you are taking such good care of yourselves, and so will I.